Hey everybody, how's it going? So this is going to be the painting today. I'm going to try and get it done or as much as possible in this session. Real talk, I'll probably spend, an hour afterwards trying to like clean up all my bad transitions. And also, it would be a miracle if I managed to accomplish anything of merit today, because the last 2 or 3 days have been completely and totally consumed in puppy time. And as there have already been a couple of requests, I promise that at the end of wait a second, hold on, folks. I'm not sure if everything's working the way it's supposed to. Let's see. All right, yeah, all right, never mind. Never mind. Don't worry about me. What I was going to say is at the end of this stream, I will go ahead and play a short video of the puppy so you can see her in all of her majesty. Yeah, so, right. Yeah, so any questions that you have, I'm here for them, and I'm just going to get to painting. If you don't know anything about like the palette that I'm using or whatever, there's an FAQs link in the description of this video that you can check out. All the info is there, and yeah, that's that. But any questions you have, like art related, whatever, Alla Prima related, just chuck them into the comments. Or you know what, frankly, let's be honest, if you have questions that are dog related, I'll be answering those as well. But yeah, so usual process here. I've just blocked this in colored pencil, and I'm gonna go ahead and do like a little linear block in that kind of helps me keep the design of the drawing in place while I go a little bit crazy in terms of like halftones and values and things. Usually this is my kind of process for Alla Prima, just because if you know me, like I'm kind of a design fanatic, so I'm always looking for whether or not the drawing works in something rather than, yeah, like a lot of other qualities. It's just my particular notion. I don't claim that it's. By the way, I think that there's artistic things that are maybe not always so straightforward. I think really good design is very artistic, but I understand it doesn't have the splash effect, that like some big crazy painting might do. Anyway, whatever. Maybe that's just my insecurities talking. But folks, there's not like a single question. What's going on? I know that there's people. I know there's people out there watching. I'm sure that you have some comment or question, or maybe all of you are just fixated on thinking about the video of my dog that you're gonna see later. Who's actually just waking up from a nap. She's on the sofa with Cornelia. They were enjoying a little afternoon nap, as both of them like to do, actually. By the way, hello from everybody like Rumen Plaminov that's watching, and MJ Artwork, and Eddie Sedgwick. Hello to you folks. And thank you as always for kind of tuning in. By the way, if you're thinking that you're totally bored and watching this, well, actually, let me scratch that. If you're really bored and watching this, never mind. But if you're watching this and thinking, oh, that content is kind of interesting, if you would hit the like button, it would do a big favor to me and would not cost you a single thing. So if you want to do that, that's my YouTuber obligation to ask. Ruben Plaminov says, as I learn, I appreciate your approach to drawing more and more. You somehow keep the wrong marks to a minimum and carve out the form gradually. Is your book happening for real? Tell us more. Yeah, so interesting notes about that. So I presented this idea of like doing a book maybe a couple months ago, and I've been kind of working a little by little towards it, because naturally, I'm releasing content in like so many different places that I can't just like, okay, now I'm going to take 9 months and like just do a book, so it's all got to happen kind of little by little. Now, what's happening with the book is that I'm actually going back through all of my video lessons, and I'm kind of compiling lesson notes for each and every lesson. So far, we have, I think, just one lesson completed, and then another one that's kind of getting closer, like on the way to being completed. Now, eventually, once all those individual lesson notes are kind of compiled together, are finished, I'm going to start compiling them together into like their own text. But this way, all of the texts will be valuable from the perspective that like they will relate to the tutorials that I've made, and so they're going to like basically create a very readable appendix to like the video lessons, right? Because by the way, the inefficiency that I'm trying to fix here actually is that, you know, a 3-hour tutorial is great because it kind of covers everything that you could possibly need to know about what's going on. However, if you needed to know or like remind yourself of one particular thing, I mean, you're gonna like be digging through it forever. So what the lesson notes here are kind of engineered to try and do is to create a way that you can like quickly access the visual ideas that are being presented in my tutorials. So yes, the book is definitely like happening. It's definitely on the way. But you know, this is something that is one among many projects that I have currently going on, along with a brand new puppy that quite honestly takes absolutely 110% of your attention. Cornelia and I are like barely managing to. This is the first time I've touched a paintbrush, honestly, since the puppy kind of entered our lives. So, she takes all of the attention. So the book is definitely not getting more attention than the puppy right now. In fact, I can hear her over there actually chewing on something right now. Let's go to another question. Let's see. Shaz is asking thoughts on the Herald speed books. I've got so many thoughts on the Herald speed books. You know, the coolest thing about Speed is that I think he manages to make writing about drawing and painting like an academic approach to drawing and painting actually sound like kind of fun and interesting, you know, which is a hurdle that many authors fall in front of. It's not easy to take this relatively dry stuff and kind of make it sound particularly interesting. Which, by the way, side note, if you're a Patreon subscriber, then you will know that the lesson on Bridgman, which is essentially like Bridgman for Dummies, or like, you know, that series of books like for Dummies, right? This is like Bridgman for beginners, Bridgman for people for whom maybe they don't have like a basis yet for kind of understanding a lot of Bridgman's like kind of explanations, kind of unpacking that for you. But I just released that. It's a downloadable lesson. So if you were a subscriber before November 15th, then you've got that lesson. Which, by the way, if you had any problems viewing it, remember it is a downloadable lesson. So it's going to be easiest to view and interact with on like a laptop or desktop. I know some of you were watching it on an iPad or something and having some trouble. So I just want to say that it's not engineered for necessarily a mobile release, though I know a lot of you will be able to watch it on your phones and things. But anyway, that's out. I just wanted to say, mention that. So let's see. I need to get, by the way, that's, if you're hearing a dog in the background, that's not my dog. That's the neighbor's dog who barks through all of my live streams. Let's see. Animation Master Studies says, how do some artists who work directly drawing curves manage to be accurate? Holbein drew the most accurate drawings ever in Silver Point, where you had one go, and Ang criticized straight line blocking. there's a lot of different roads that lead to Rome, and if anything, when I'm talking about drawing and painting, I try as much as possible to communicate that there's so many possibilities to you. I think that drawing with curved lines, there's a whole school of thought kind of dedicated to that. I mean, who would I be to say that you couldn't? And I guess that's not your assertion in the question. You're asking, how do you? That would be probably a little bit outside of my. I wouldn't say that I understand that intimately enough to explain it in a simple way. So I've just got to defer and say that I'm sure that you can, but it's something that's not really hasn't been my focus. So I'm not sure if I can really explain it. I think that probably the principles of it are not totally dissimilar. That you start with like kind of basic forms and basic structures and kind of in a way like overlap them over each other until eventually you have these kind of complex forms that we're looking for in a kind of finished or accurate drawing. That would be my guess. If you're somebody who is deeply involved in the drawing in curves movement, then by all means, just say something in the comments. Let us know what your approach is. Meantime, I've got to get some things blocked in here. You might hear, by the way, Cornelia conversing with our little pup in the background, which is really sweet to hear. Vijay Kumar says, what are your thoughts on realistic shading versus Impressionism? I think they're two expressions of the same urge, right? Representational painting, representational art, is a kind of motivation. I think it's like it's something that people are like drawn to, and so naturally, just as every person is going to be quite different, you're going to find like a lot of different expressions of representation. So in the case of like Impressionism versus like finely honed kind of rendering and stuff, I think we're just talking about different aesthetic choices there, and that's always that's always kind of interesting to observe. In a lot of ways, I think they're like two sides of the same coin. It's like there's a really big deal. Obviously, the narrative is really powerful. The idea of like the Impressionists like breaking away from the academy and all of the drama associated with that. In reality, it was more like breaking away from, I feel like, a structure in a way. Like they were kind of annoyed at the way the salons were run and the way that the academy was run and was teaching. Which, by the way, if you've ever been around a group of artists, you understand like if you have 10 different artists, you have 10 different opinions about how something should be done. We all have like a big idea about how things are supposed to be done, and usually it's a like uncompromising one. So it's not surprising that there are like schisms throughout art history and things like that. So I think that they can be viewed as not so wildly different from one another. I think that there's a lot of similarities. By the way, you're going to see this blocking is going to be absolutely bonkers because I'm so like out of painting in my mind right now. But hey, it's the job, so you got to do what you got to do. Right. Z is asking, when will we see you drawing a self-portrait? Thanks for your videos. Yeah, self-portraits, I got so burned out on self-portraits after so many years of like when I was just graduating, I couldn't hire models. I had no money, and I mean I had less than no money, so eventually, like I just had to. I painted myself for like ages and ages and ages, and I just kind of got burnt out on it. Just got sick and tired of it. That being said, the self-portrait is such an enduring subject matter. I'm sure there's an opportunity or a place for it eventually in my teaching. In fact, you know, when I was at the academy, you would find that actually at the very end of your studies, you would be doing like a couple final projects, right? So you would do one final project that was a kind of formal portrait that was kind of head and hands, you know, so like a head, bust, and hands. And then you would you'd also do like a self-portrait. So we'll see what happens, but maybe at the end of the atelier tier, the curriculum that I'm producing on my Patreon, maybe there's an opportunity to do something there where you where we have a come on words, where we have a self-portrait project, and we kind of go through some of the principles and concepts involved in that. If it seems popular and interesting, I definitely could kind of get on board with that. But let's always just see what comes. Yeah. So maybe, yeah, it's coming. It's possible. Let's see. Vijay Kumar says, where's the puppy? Show us the pup. Listen, at the end of the stream, there's going to be a puppy segment where we'll have all puppy talk. I'll tell you everything about the puppy. Everybody will tune out because nobody wants to hear a guy on the internet talking about his dog. But I promise, for those of you that are interested, I will definitely talk your ear off about our little puppy. In fact, there will also be a name reveal. We have a name. It's a fantastic name. Some of you will no doubt find it to be, you know, a little bit, it's not controversial. But I think that there are two kinds of people that hear the name. One person hears the name and goes like, huh? And another person hears the name and goes, oh, that's so nice. Now, whether the other person that says, oh, that's so nice is like just being polite, I don't know. But it's a name that I've chosen, and I believe in it, and I'm sticking with it. So if you hate it, don't tell me about it. That's the bottom line. Right. Ruben Blanco says, do you have a video explaining how to hold and control your pencil? Hold and control the pencil. I don't think that's actually one that I do have a video on. However, let's say this. I've got a series of like short concepts sort of written down, like, you know, I've taken notes about it and I'm going to produce them eventually. I wanted to do this because there's so many of these like little topics like that. Like, how do you like hold your pencil? Like, how do you control your pencil? Like, how do you do this? How do you do that? You know, how do you actually just use a palette knife? In fact, so next month in December, the first painting assignment in the Atelier tier is coming out. And that means like a series of things. One of which is that we need to talk about like how to mix paint, right? So the first video that's coming out in that series is me just explaining how to mix a series of color values for grisaille painting. And that's going to be, like I said, on December 1st. And of course, you know, like also the sphere painting video will kind of come out along with that, which I'm particularly excited about. I've told you guys before, you know, I feel like it's in a way like a quite pivotal project for drawing and painting students, which is to say like drawing students that are transitioning into becoming painting students. For me, like it's a thing that I wish had been in the curriculum. I didn't do this project actually as a student, so this will be something that I am correcting from my past. Oh, are we having? All right, wait a minute. There's gonna be an early puppy appearance. This is happening, people. Gonna be a little one. Oh, okay, it's happening. She's a little bit excited. She just got in from outside. So this is little baby Iggy. She is probably the cutest person I've ever seen. And she's just up from a nap, so she's a little bit groggy. But she's freaking adorable. If possible, I would do the whole stream just holding her and talking about the time. But I don't think anybody would be in for that. So this is our little puppy. She's here to stay. She's amazing. And yeah, Yeah, I'm gonna give her back to Cornelia. All right, people, that's it. You can tune out. Stream is done. You've seen little Iggy, IGGY. She's in a way she is also called Iggy for Iggy Pop, but she's not so much named after him per se. But I just like the name Iggy for a little dog, and that's what we did. So there you go. I'm sure like I'm beaming like a proud father at the moment. But yeah, so all of our time the last couple of days have been like completely consumed in Iggy time. We've been yeah, just like when she sleeps, we sleep like on a mattress on the floor with her, and you know, so everything is kind of, what's the word? It's Iggy centric at the moment. Yeah. So anyway, let me check the comments and see if everybody's seen her. Yeah. Phyllis Riley is saying that she's in for a stream of a whole stream just of the puppy. I appreciate that. And I would be in for it as well. But all right, back to business, folks. Back to art talk here. Eddie Sedgwick is saying, isn't it possible to do an underdrawing in dilute paint to close the final color so that no underdrawing will show through as the painting ages and the paint goes transparent? Yeah, the idea of like saponification and paint basically becoming more transparent over time is definitely a thing. And I think though different pigments, you know, are fugitive like in different ways. You know, they perform differently over time. And so I'm not sure, like if you're using titanium white, you know, and you have like a very light, what's the word, like hand that you're not like really like putting a lot of value in the drawing underneath, I'm not sure how much you would incur that transparency being a problem. I'm completely open to being corrected about that, only that it's not something I expect too much to incur. Because by the way, like if you did do an underdrawing, or sorry, like if you did cover your underdrawing in paint that was dark and let that dry and then painted over it, would it not have the same thing that if the paint on top went transparent, it would also reveal that like darker underpainting? Anyway, this is like really, I know, technical stuff. And actually, I think it's kind of interesting. Cornelia, by the way, is a little bit more in the realm of an expert regarding that than I am. I kind of pay attention to what she says, essentially. And, you know, between her and like Giorgio Hanlon from Natural Pigments and Tatiana there, you know, that's where I get my kind of, you know, base principles from. So yeah, I'm not totally crystal on that one, just in terms of like how much occurrence of that you'd actually have, you know, painting with kind of contemporary pigments and things. Like titanium white, for instance. Like with lead white, of course, which is a lot more transparent, maybe you have a lot more kind of occurrence of that. So I'm just hearing Cornelia in the background talking with Iggy. Right, so let's see. Jim Sketch Testing says, are you naturally inclined to draw by line or by tone? Really cool question. Naturally inclined to draw by line or by tone? I think that there were maybe different periods. So when I first studied, I was kind of taught a lot about kind of drawing in tone. And like that was the en vogue idea at the time. And so I think I gravitated towards that at first. And if you would have asked me at that time in 2005 or 6 or even 7 probably, I would have said, yeah, no, I'm much more inclined to draw in tone. However, you know, subsequently, you know, chasing my own studies, you know, I realized that no, actually drawing in tone is not what I'm far more inclined to draw in line. However, like my background in kind of value impression based drawing, I think always comes through. Like you can always kind of get a sense of it a little bit. So yeah, it's hard to say that. Maybe I kind of straddle that fence. Actually, is the reality of it. Yeah, it'll be a miracle if I get anything on this canvas that's useful. I hope, by the way, all of you that may or may not be painting or drawing along with me, I hope that you're having a super focused time, unlike what I am having. Let's see. Carlos Andres says, is Stonehenge paper good to work with pastels? If not, what paper would you recommend? Ouch. You got to go for a pastel expert, because I am... You probably know more than me about pastel drawing. Just that it's like an endeavor you're interested in. I think it's really cool. I think pastel drawings are fascinating, but I think I would have to say probably Stonehenge is not the best paper for pastel drawing. That would be my best guess. But even that is just me, an unqualified, non-expert, just taking a shot in the dark at whether or not that's true. If there are any pastel experts in the audience, maybe you can throw in a recommendation. Need to kind of hit my lightest light and just see like what the world of highlights is going to look like here. That's about as light as I can get, meaning that like a lot of what I have to paint is going to get like a lot darker than that. Probably some of the contrast here is okay. Just depends on what the other halftones in that area are going to do. Yeah, but it's nice to have your kind of lightest light in. I definitely don't have any of my darkest dark in here. I just wanted to get something kind of scrubbed into the skin so that, yeah, we could have like some sense of what's going on here in this crazy painting that I'm trying to make. Let's see. MJ Artwork is asking, what do you do when you mix graphite and white chalk? Do you darken by erasing the white chalk, or use a harder pencil on the white chalk to turn form? Yeah, I actually find that once you have white chalk on the paper, I don't like so much to hatch over it. And it's only about performance. I don't really care, like, you know, if you're supposed to or you're not supposed to do whatever. It's more just about, like, I've noticed that I don't get, like, the same kind of, like, nice gradients that I get, you know, when I'm just doing graphite on paper, as I do when I'm applying it over the top of white chalk. I don't like the performance there. Yeah, it just leads to like I find like a lot of really sharp edges, which again is not, for sure is not my, that's not where I want to be. It's a place where I have like sharp edges everywhere. It's not my deal. Let's see. Rumen Plamanov says, if we are aiming at an unfinished look and using a rather limited amount of shapes, kind of like abstract realism, what would be key in such a painting? Okay. So we're talking about, I always find like, so aesthetics often, all right, now, wow, this is, we're going to go to this place. Aesthetics are often a result of a kind of conceptual choice. Like, you know, if I choose to limit my palette to, you know, whatever 3 pigments, you know, the color world that's going to come out of that will have a particular aesthetic, and it will be, you know, I think in some ways beautiful. It will be a harmony of those 3 colors instead of, you know, something that represents the world itself. Like, so this is one way in which we can take a kind of abstract decision, right, or set an abstract kind of set of parameters on our choices that can create a kind of visual result. Now, when you're making something that is really kind of simplified and shape-based, I think that you probably want to like look at artists like you and Uglo, for instance. He's someone who worked with very, very kind of simplified, limited values, limited, well, I don't know if limited color per se, but the way that he works is very like direct, or worked. I don't think he's still living. Was with these kind of big, broad, kind of simplified shapes, and if you look at what he was doing, I think that what's the good advice I can give about this? I would say that when you're trying to figure out what shapes to use, what to make your priorities in a project like that, I think you do want to consider whether the subject is more important or the aesthetic is more important, right? Are the abstract properties more what you want to make the painting about? Or is it like in the case of, for instance, like a commission portrait, right? Obviously, likeness is far more important than whatever your own particular aesthetic desires are. I mean, in 99% of cases, anyway. So what choices can you take? I don't know. It's a cool question. I'm not sure if I have like a super meaningful answer to it. But just to say that, if you find yourself with a question like that, I think you want to look to different examples. Now, I remember a time that I met, probably all of you know the artist Chuck Close. But they were doing like this retrospective of his printmaking works at the Miami Art Museum, the downtown museum in Miami. And I got tickets to this, like the VIP viewing. Not because I was a VIP at all. I was a VUP. I was a very unimportant person at the time. But in any event, I wound up there and I cornered Chuck, poor guy. And I was like, hey, Chuck. Listen, man, what was it like when you were in your studio, in your 20s? What was it all about? What were you doing? And I've talked about this story before, I think, somewhere, but the basic conceit inside of like meeting an artist like that is that you want to find out like what are the commonalities, like what did he do that's like what you did? So I'm asking him what was he doing in his studio in his early 20s, which is what I was at the time, and he said that he was like, oh, I wasn't doing very much. I mean, it was mostly just work that looked like other artists' work. So saying basically that he was like really kind of unoriginal in his 20s, and he was now you can take that a lot of different ways. Like one of them is that he's just like taking the piss out of me or whatever. Another would be to say like he's being like really, really real, and that when you're young as an artist, one of the things you're doing is you're trying to kind of figure out what your deal is about, and you got to kind of try on a lot of different hats, I think, to understand that. Now, whether that means that you're doing a lot of different work that looks like other work or whatever, or that just means that you're looking at a lot of artwork and trying to understand it, through that experience. Whichever is the case, it doesn't matter so much. But just to say that you need to, you need to try on those hats. You need to just give a shot to things that you're drawn to. By the way, you're probably hearing the sounds of puppy exploration in the other room. Or I hope that you are, because I am, and it sounds wonderful. Let's see. A lot of comments coming in about Iggy. Yes, she is a dansk svensk gårdshund, which is a Danish-Swedish farm dog. And Despina Cantere says the cutest puppy in the world. I certainly think so. Yes. Reynola Dominguez says you are giddy with puppy love. It's so true. Oh my God. Yeah, it's very true. Cornelia and I are both very giddy with puppy love. Yeah. I'm really even only doing this stream because I kind of committed professionally to do one every Wednesday. Otherwise, I'd be over there playing. RK7 says, I would like to ask, what is your advice to oil painters or the artists aspiring to be a master like you? you got to be absolutely patient with yourself, frankly. Um, you know, every like step on the pathway to like mastery is framed by resistance. You can think of it even in the smallest thing that you've done. Like, if you if you're an Android phone user and you switch to an iPhone, there's going to be resistance in that. There's going to be things that you don't know, and you have to like search out and re-figure out how to do something that that is even like the simplest thing. Someone asked me earlier, like, do you have a video about how to hold your pencil? Now that seems like, shouldn't we all know how to hold our pencils? I mean, that was like when we learned to tie our shoes, right? Wasn't that when we learned to hold a pencil? But every little step on your journey is going to be a new thing, and that means you're going to incur a kind of resistance. And if you have an impatience about it, I think that, well, several things can happen. One of which is that you determine that it's not worth the trouble. In fact, like, most people respond to resistance by going like, well, what's the better way to do this? Because if I'm having this resistance, that means something's going wrong. But I would say that actually resistance is the game. The whole thing is resistance, and so you need to make that like a part of your plan, is to be prepared for resistance. And that would be my advice. It comes in, in line with advice I used to give a lot to students at the academy, was that, along with your talent and all the other things that you have to have, tenacity is probably among the most important things that you can bring to your practice. Because if you are not tenacious, you are likely to quit. And really the difference between people that go all the way and people that do not is just that many people quit. That's the bottom line. And by the way, doesn't mean you're a bad person if you quit. It just means that, that sense of tenacity, or maybe, you realize that the value was not what you thought it was or what you wanted it to be. So there it is. But if you want to succeed, for sure, like, the bottom line is, the baseline of that achievement is that you need to start by not quitting, which there are plenty of opportunities to do. So many opportunities to quit. I've had plenty of opportunities to quit. However, at a early age, it was apparent to me that I wasn't really going to do anything else. So it was figure this out, or, I don't know, work at McDonald's. No offense to anybody that works at McDonald's. Cornelius corrected me about that. No, but, McDonald's is kind of a stand-in for, I mean, not the greatest job in the world. Like, probably if you're working at McDonald's, you may or may not want to be working there either. Anyway, right, on to the next question, because that was a long-winded answer. Ruben Blanco says, why do you use a white surface instead of toning the paper? Do you recommend toning the surface for a beginner? Yeah, in the sphere painting video, which is my introduction to oil painting for my atelier tier students, we do work on a toned ground. And the reason I don't do it here is because this is an oil painting paper, and I'm just kind of preserving that whiteness as kind of a property of the paper itself, which I think I kind of like. It's kind of cool. So that's why I don't tone it beforehand. Though, let's say in the future I might do that. I might actually tone it in the future. We'll see. We'll kind of see what comes. Never say never. But at the moment, yeah, like, it's not a toned ground. It's just also, by the way, like, it's kind of nice to work on a white ground sometimes. I think it's kind of interesting. It's a very different approach. By the way, how bad does this look right now? Yeah, fantastic. It'll come around, but probably closer to the end. But I'm almost blocked in. I just like to make sure I get everything in a decent place, and then go from there. Right, other questions. RK7 says, also, what do you want them to focus more on or practice more on their journey? Also, future advice would be great as well. So you want the beginning, middle, and future advice. I mean, you know, another thing is you can think in a very clear way about your assumptions. One of the things that I noticed in students over the years, and this is you know, if you're a student, you know, just think about this a little bit yourself as well. I can say this also with a clear conscience because I know that I did this, and so you know, I'm part of doing this as well. This is not a holier than thou moment that I'm bringing up. But what I wanted to say is that all of your assumptions about something are based on what you already know. Meaning that your teachers, who, in all honesty, most likely know way more than you, right, have a whole different set of, like, you know, assumptions and knowledge that you're not privy to yet. I say this because one of the things that hinders students all the time is that they hear an advice and they think about it critically, which, by the way, it's a good thing. But they think about it critically based upon what they already know and then discount it because it does not align with the things that they already know. Now, the benefit that you don't have, of course, is to know that maybe this is something actually you've never really heard of. And so this is new to you. And so the whole paradigm of thought you're being introduced to, you need to adjust to that. Now, the simple way to talk about this is what I tell students is that, sorry, I hear her walking around, is that you should try to figure out, she's chewing on the little fence that's around my studio. You need to, wait a minute. Oh, I almost lost it. Yes. When you receive a piece of advice, apply yourself to thinking about why it does work, why it can work, rather than why it can't. Again, so often critical thinking can take the shape of reducing possibilities to say, like, oh no, that doesn't make sense, or this doesn't work, or whatever it is, or I tried it and it didn't work out. A lot of times, frankly, you just need to try it again. You need to do it more. You need to try it harder. You need to make your attempt better. You need to repeat that attempt. Like, these are the things that eventually, are what practice is about, what mastery eventually is about. Is repeating these endeavors kind of over and over until you understand them inside and out, backwards and forwards. So just, be patient with the ideas you're being introduced to. Be patient with the kind of advices that you're given. Be patient with yourself. None of this stuff happens quickly. I can promise you that. That's why all the tipsters, right? Like, and you see this in various advertising all over the place. They're like, did you think oil painting was hard? Well, we're going to show you how it's easy. It's like, come on, people. Like, that's so low-hanging fruit. Like, aren't we better than that? Than thinking something that people take entire lifetimes to master, like somebody's actually got a secret that makes it easy. It's just so unrealistic. Anyway, let's see. Aniket Pal says, how can I reach a level of measuring subjects just by looking at it? I think that's oftentimes a lot more about construction than it is about, like, you're not really like measuring with your eyes. I think that eventually human anatomy is something for which there are a series of like consistent patterns in the planes of the head, for instance, that you can use to help you to kind of understand or to build from a simple form into eventually a very complex one. So I don't think it's really so much that you're just looking at it. I think that it's a little bit more that you have this understanding of the patterns of the head that allow you to build up without like a heap of kind of measurement and excess kind of labor. So it seems to like happen like quickly and effortlessly, but the effort has been put in already, you know, for dozens of years before that, you know. That's the other thing, like when you see painters just like banging in the head and it's like awesome straight away. Maybe you go like, well, maybe painting is easy for them. It's like, nah, they worked hard for like a really long time for it to like look like it's kind of easy, rather than it actually being easy. I think that's the far more likely scenario. At least makes a lot more sense to me. So let's see what's next. BS says, do you have any plans for doing a workshop in Norway? Cornelia, do we have any plans for doing a workshop in Norway? Eventually. She says eventually. So I'm going to leave you with eventually. It's possible, you know, I mean, I think people are getting their like third booster shot or whatever these days. Who knows what the next year will hold, or 2 years, or whatever it is. I can't say. So we'll give you an eventually. In-person workshops, I think, are really can be really fun. Of course, connecting with people and getting to like work in that studio environment together is kind of cool. But you know, it's the other thing about it too is that like it's really expensive for people. You know, you gotta like fly to wherever. You know, fly to Oslo to like take a course. That's a tough one for a lot of folks. So I don't know. Let's put that on the never say never list and kind of move on from there. But eventually, I'd like to get like a nicer. I mean, not a nicer. I mean, a studio away from home, you know, or at least like home adjacent. Right now, like of course, I work. My studio is like the other half of the living room, kind of. Which probably sounds kind of funny because it's like, oh, Steven, aren't you like a professional? You've been painting for years and you paint in the living room. I actually kind of like it, to tell you the truth. It started because of the pandemic, but eventually it's really nice, actually. You know, and it's one of the things, too, like for little Iggy, you got to think about, she doesn't want to be left alone all day. Not that, I mean, of course, I would take her to the studio even if I had a studio elsewhere, but you get the idea. I like being at home. It's not bad. Let's see. CSBK says, how to paint almost all lit portrait with very close value? Would I rely on the structure with mixing very close values and treat it as a strong contrast portrait? Any advice on this issue? Yeah, it's all about those halftones. You know, that's the thing about, you know, when you have like a lot of light shape, kind of no shadow shape, it's all about halftones. And halftones, of course, are all about planes. If you understand the planes of the head really well, halftones will be quite a bit easier for you to deal with. That's why, you know, when I left the academy and I knew, I'm not going to say I knew next to nothing. I exaggerate so much. But I didn't know as much as I know now about halftones. Like, so painting a head like this one would have been way more challenging, which, by the way, I'm sure I'm making this look really challenging right now. But it would have been way more challenging right out of the academy because, again, like I just didn't have that background of like looking at like kind of conceptual structure such as it is. Yeah, so study the planes of the head, you know, which, by the way, Planes of the Head project is moving forward, folks. I threatened this one quite a while ago. A lot of you who are patrons have already seen the 3D skull that I had. Getting the, hopefully, by the way, it's been in the mail for a long time, but I'm getting a print, 3D print made of that skull, which is to the set of proportions that I really like. And eventually that's going to be commercially available. I don't know if I'll do a Kickstarter or something about it, but eventually I'm gonna do that. But I want to wait until I get my Planes of the Head model sorted as well, so I can kind of package them together. So we'll have like a planes the head model and a skull that have the same proportions. And then I can bring that to the people of the world. And I'm really excited about it. But that would be the exact kind of thing I would say, you know, check out that planes the head model, because that's basically going to govern, you know, all of the halftones and things that you have to use to kind of turn the form in that situation. Speaking of turning the form, I wonder if I can get any of that going on here. These really cool, like, literally cool halftones around the eyes here. Let's see if I can get some of that going on. Yeah, oof, lots of work to do. See if I get some of this little tear duct in here. Just a second, folks. I'm gonna get back to those questions in just a second, but you know, some things just need a little bit more focus. Right. So MJ Artwork says, what chair do you recommend for an artist? Sitting and drawing 6 hours every day does start to get to me a bit. What chair? I mean, I don't have a great one. I'll say that. I have like maybe a decent one. So, I mean, I don't know. I just have like a decent office chair is what I have. I'm sure that there's like a better chair out there. Something nice and ergonomic and built with lots of lumbar support, but you know, I don't know what it is. I'm sure there's a Kickstarter out there for like the best office chair ever, that got like $1 trillion in funding, because yeah, if you're sitting all day, then it gets tough. Right. Who's focused? Me. Kinda. Got the head almost blocked in here. I just want to get some of these values on the chin dialed in. I think it's a decent kind of mosaic of values through here. At least, you know, I think probably come the time I'll be able to, I think, finish this properly. Definitely won't do it in the time that I have for the live stream, but we'll get there eventually. Let's see. What do we gain learning about Bridgman? Emmanuel Aliou says, what do we gain learning about Bridgman? How about three-dimensionality? How about structure? How about thinking in terms of volume and perspective? How about like genius design insights? I mean, what do you not gain from learning about Bridgman? Maybe it's a better question. M. Collins is asking timeline for Sergeant Part 3. In fact, Sergeant Part 3 is going to be coming sooner than you think. I've got it definitely on my urgent list of things to complete, and so I'm efforting currently to get to a place where that's a reality. It won't be very long. I would say I've given an estimate that maybe it could be done in like March. But you know, puppy world is a real thing, folks, and you know that I have like this nonstop content releasing schedule, and I intend to keep it, but it's gonna get a little bit more challenging. So there will be some times where things like, you know, the Sergeant tutorial, which is something that I'm just doing kind of on the side of everything else, which I know that sounds crazy, but that's how I work. That something like that could be a casualty, for instance, you know, of the need to be in kind of several places at once. But listen, it's high on the list of things that I want to do. Let's say February, March, somewhere around there, in the new year for sure. It's not gonna be in December. I mean, that would be crazy. Yeah. Let's see. JD Anarchy is asking, I'm working on perspective and drawing from imagination lately, and I'm wondering if you have any advice on either subject. Yeah, I think that perspective and drawing from imagination kind of go perfectly hand in hand. I mean, so for sure you're kind of working or efforting in the right direction. Um, my best advice uh, about that would be like practice. I think the simple perspective stuff a lot, because the better you are at the simple perspective stuff, the easier like the complicated kind of drawing from imagination stuff will be. They're kind of two. They're not. They're separate skills in that they kind of come out of like separate places, but eventually they are necessary to combine to be kind of fluent in that world. Yeah, but that means like you can practice one while you're getting good at that. Eventually, that will contribute to the ease with which you get better at the other. Like this used to be for like anatomy students that I had at the academy. It was important that they actually learn to draw before they learn anatomy, because what we're trying to do, we're not trying to learn anatomy like, so we can, I don't know, diagnose people or be a doctor or whatever. We're trying to learn anatomy because we want to use it to draw and paint well. So naturally, the language with which drawing and painting takes place needs to be the language in which you learn that anatomy. Otherwise, it's kind of cool knowledge, but how does it get into your drawing? So I would say that perspective is like the language of drawing from imagination. So if you don't know perspective yet, I think the work that you're going to have to do to like learn drawing from imagination is going to be that much harder because you don't know it. I hope that makes sense. Do we have something here? Are we getting somewhere on this painting? I'm not sure. Right. Riley Frambest, I know that's a mispronunciation, says, hi, Stephen, are you using any medium in your paints or between changing colors? Yeah, just a little bit of linseed oil. I kind of dip my brush in it off on the side and just kind of clean it off with a paper towel, which actually I need to switch that paper towel out. Let's see. Zaid Shah says, anybody know what color palettes he's using? Check the FAQs post or link that's in the description of this video, and that will take you to, listen, all the gear and weird stuff that I use. It's all there. Let's see. RK7 says, thanks for answering my question. I'll definitely work on your advice. It was helpful, and the encouragement. Very cool. Sleepy Vamp says, everyone says Herman Miller, but if you can find one with good adjustments, that's all you need. I don't know what that's about. I'm sure that's advice related to another thing we were talking about. Loomis versus Bridgman? Is it? Let's see. That's MM Borg saying Loomis versus Bridgman. I'm not sure if that dichotomy is one I'm comfortable with commenting on. I mean, are they versus each other? I mean, I think that Loomis is kind of after a different kind of student. In a way, Loomis is, I think, and this is, by the way, this is a compliment. It may sound like faint praise, but I think Loomis is getting after really a kind of beginning student, which we all are at one point. And as such, like his advice about designing the head, I think is a highly practical and very simple one. Or all of the advices, and I love that about Loomis. Can't stress enough how this is me 100% complimenting Loomis. Whereas Bridgman, for all of the stuff that he may say that yes, this is for beginners or whatever, I think in general actually like someone who will get Bridgman is a little bit more advanced. That's why I'm doing the whole series unpacking Bridgman's thoughts on education and on designing the head, because I find it, very, I don't know, advanced in a way. So your question of them being verses, I think that, like with all things, for me, I would say they work best together, and that I would highly recommend to actually study both of them in great depth, because I think they're both fantastic teachers. And if I've learned one thing over the years about kind of educating myself, it's that sometimes actually like another source, or like rather one source, will like kind of clarify your thinking on another. And maybe that's where the verses can come in, that we can say, could Loomis's basic introduction to perspective in the head actually enhance your ability to understand the more complicated ones given by Bridgman? Absolutely. Why wouldn't it, right? So yeah, I would think of them more as educations that can go hand in hand. I don't see anything particularly, what's the word, like divisive in between them, like if you, in the 19th century, if you were studying with Ingres versus studying with Delacroix, then there's truly a versus, because Delacroix would tell you it's all about color, and Ingres will tell you it's all about line, and that they are both fighting for competing space in the art education in France of that era. Whereas I just don't think it's that way with Bridgman and Loomis. So that's my whole take. That's the entirety of my take. There's little puppy sounds coming from the other room, which, by the way, for sure is making me want to end the stream early, but I'll persist. Let's see. Rumen Plamenov says, what is something in your art that is unique or differentiates you from others in a way? It's a cool question. All right, I'll give two different answers to it. One will be the answer that I like hold close to my heart and that I truly believe. And then the other will be like honoring the question, which is really like, what is the practical difference in between you and somebody else or whatever. What I really think sets me apart from every other artist on the planet is that absolutely no one else is me. Grew up like me, had my experiences, saw what I've seen and do what I've done. Nobody else has done it. It's impossible, right? And so naturally, like, what I bring to artwork is going to be completely unique in that way. Now, understand, of course, everybody absolutely is. Now, that's one thing. Now, you can, what's the word? Because you're unique doesn't mean that your artwork is unique per se. But I think that we all have that same potential to be unique in that way. What you have to do is start to understand yourself better, start to understand your thoughts, your feelings, your impressions, your experiences, kind of bet on yourself in a way. And if you do, I think those things that are unique will eventually, come to the fore in terms of, the expression in your artwork. That doesn't mean like, oh, just be yourself and everybody's cool and yada, yada, yada. It takes effort and like it takes work, and understanding these things is not always like, looking up a word in the dictionary. That doesn't mean that you understand something in depth and intimately, and it'll likely take you years to bring to fruition the things that you begin to understand about yourself through this kind of study. But I believe very much it's the pathway to any kind of sustainable originality. A lot of other things, I would be tempted to say any other thing, really is a matter of you, I think, emulating in a way. another artist, which is, whatever. It's not a bad thing, but it's a thing. In fact, I said earlier, I think it's something that we all probably like go through is a period of emulation. Because, when you're young, I mean, speaking for myself, when I was young, I knew relatively little about much of anything, which is not the same case for everybody. There can be like young people that are really wise about stuff, but I think in general we all have like tons and tons to learn about ourselves and about the world, even when we think we're pretty clear on how everything works. That probably just means we need to look closer. Wow, how about that for like a dose of wisdom for today? Let's see. Joshua Smith says, do you glue canvas to board or do you prefer stretching it? I do both. Yeah. I prefer not to do it myself or glue canvas to board myself anymore, just because it's, you incur so many like problems doing that. Like there's you get air bubbles and this can happen and that can happen. If I'm using canvas that's on a panel, then that usually means like I bought it somewhere for instance, like the Sargent tutorial that I'm doing, that's a Raymar panel. So it's a Belgian portrait linen on a adhered using a vacuum press to an archival MDF panel. So like all that stuff, like all the materials they're using are, they're made to be as archival as Raymar can manage to make them to be. That's why like I don't mind kind of outsourcing that. A lot of people will like to do all the material stuff themselves, and I think go for it. It's great. But I mean, it's just my take is I'm just doing what I want to do, and a lot of times it's not like kind of preparing canvases and panels and stuff. Like when I have time to like really focus and paint, like I'd rather be focusing and painting instead of like kind of preparing materials. But that is not a qualitative statement. If you are one of those materials people, go for it, man. I think it's great. I think the world needs more people like that. Go for it. But I am of a different camp. Let's see. All right. So Emmanuel is asking, when does the next Bridgman lesson come? And will there be constant assignment like the perspective block? The next Bridgman assignment is TBD. It'll come out when I have the time to make one. And also they'll all be very assignment based. The thing I wanted to do with Bridgman is I wanted to kind of take it to a really practical place. I wanted people to get a sense that, okay, I'm doing Bridgman because ... Like it's going to teach me to do this thing. And that can so often be the case with like really cool instructional texts. Is that, yeah, there's not necessarily like always an exercise that's embedded in it, like that's implicit that you're supposed to be doing along with the book. So a lot of times you'll get, you'll be able to like quote the lesson word for word, but maybe like practically speaking, you don't have the practice of it like in your hands. So I wanted to, make a series of videos that flipped the script on that, like that made it so that, it was like super practical to kind of learn this. By the way, head's coming together a little bit. I'm not shy to say, I think the head's coming together just a little bit. Obviously needs a lot more focus, but I could foresee something decent coming out of this. Maybe. If I don't mess it up. Let's see. Link says, you haven't always the reference side by side, right? Regardless, I love this new format. Yeah, no, my reference is kind of over on a screen. I mean, optimally, if I wasn't live streaming, I think I would change my setup a little bit to to make it easier for me to, kind of see the stuff that I want to see and do the stuff I'm trying to do. It's a little bit challenging with, having to have all the cameras and gear and like lighting and stuff. It encroaches just a little bit on, my ability to kind of work in exactly the way that I would want to. In fact, if I wasn't live streaming, quite honestly, I'd probably be standing. I've always liked to paint standing up. Ever since I was a student, that was kind of expressed to me to be like the standard practice, and so it's something I always kind of enjoyed. It's nice to mix that up and sit down every now and then, but like in general, yeah, you'll find me wanting to stand and paint. But just practically speaking, because like during a live stream, I can't move. I gotta kind of be like here the whole time, and so like there's no like sitting breaks, which that's when it actually becomes kind of painful for a 40-year-old like myself to stand for that long. By the way, what else is happening here? Zaid Shah says, how often do these live streams happen? Yeah, like I said at the beginning, I have committed to doing one every Wednesday. So every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Oslo time, that is Central European time, I will be here. Which, by the way, I always say Oslo time instead of Central European time because I realized pretty quickly in my mentorship sessions, right, like when I meet with students kind of around the world, that like I know what CET is, but also like somebody else might know it as something different or might not know what it is at all. So people were coming back to me with all these, time zones, and like I just wouldn't know what they were, and so scheduling became really hard. But I always knew like everybody knows where Oslo is. Oslo is a city, and everybody has an iPhone or an Android or whatever, so they can just like pop into their phone and go like, oh, Oslo, that's like whatever CET, or it'll just like tell you the time. It won't even tell you what the time zone is. So the whole idea of like communicating times through time zones, I feel like is a little bit what you would call like anachronistic. It's a little bit outdated actually. Whereas it's much easier nowadays to communicate to people that what city you're kind of coming from. At least that's my feeling about it now. If anybody has a reason why time zones are still relevant, I'm all ears. But I've found them to be a little bit impractical in scheduling. Like anybody cares about it. Nobody cares about that answer. Like I'm gonna get like murdered in the comments for dissing time zone abbreviations. Yeah, all right, on to the next. Thoughts on Hogarth? Oh, I don't have any at the moment. That's LOLOL. Ho is asking about Hogarth. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to know about Hogarth. I know that art is involved, but I'm not sure in what way. So you'll have to forgive me. In the rarest of occasions, I have actually nothing to say about that question. Usually, I've got all the thoughts in the world about just about everything else, but not Hogarth, apparently. Let's see. David Rodriguez says, any advice on how to see and choose the right color in a portrait? I think I see color, but unconsciously I mix another color on the palette. Yeah, well, seeing color is very much a technique. It's something that definitely I teach in my tutorials. I talk about color context. So without going into too great a depth, you really quite simply just need to learn the technique of like how to see color. It's not like super complicated, but it also doesn't mean it's easy. It takes kind of practice to do so. But it's not so different from like learning to see value. So if you understand like how to find your darkest dark and your lightest light, then You also need to find your warmest temperature and your coldest temperature. You need to locate the most red passage in your painting and also the most green passage in your painting. So it's a matter of like understanding these spectrums and then knowing kind of how to search them out. Beyond that is practice. So I'll say that actually coming up in January, I'll be doing a tutorial video about a flesh tone sphere. So we're going to be painting a sphere in color using kind of flesh tones. And in that, we're going to start the long conversation about color, context, seeing in color, understanding color, painting in color, all those things. And it's technical, frankly. Like it's not. Color has the place of in everybody's mind that like, oh, it's just like art and you just kind of see it or whatever. But really, the skill of learning to see color, I think, it's really important to develop early on in your studies as a painter, so that again, your basis for like understanding the color world needs to be sound. It needs to make sense and be transferable and be relatable to like other subjects. So yeah, there's a whole lesson in it. Let's just leave it maybe there and say that eventually there's a whole big long lesson in it. Joshua Smith says, yeah, I've had trouble with air bubbles with canvas on boards too. Can you paint on a canvas before stretching it, or will it crack? It's kind of an interesting question. I would be tempted to say that well, I'll say this. I've painted on many canvases that were not stretched and then eventually stretched them and had no problem with it. That being said, I did stretch them within, several weeks or sometimes months after painting them. Now, if you know about oil paint, you'll understand that a painting that is just several weeks old is actually still a really young painting, and that meaning that the paint film is not so rigid just yet. That can take many years to become like a really rigid paint film. So you can probably get away with stretching your canvas, even within a year of painting it, or more, depending upon like the thickness of the paint film as well. So I don't think you need to really worry so much like in that timeline in terms of worrying about your painting cracking if you... Cornelia chimes in from the sofa where she is hanging out with Iggy that you probably don't want to use zinc white, as it has a far greater propensity to delaminate or crack and do all sorts of weird stuff than, say, titanium or lead white will do. So that is from the sofa. And it's good advice, by the way. Just because it comes from someone who's chilling on the sofa does not discount it in any way. Let's see. Raul Rai says, making a living as an artist, any thoughts, please? It's possible. But I'll say this. There are no, as far as I've seen it, there is no like one pathway, like one single track art career pathway, like this is how artists make a living. Everybody thinks it's like you just get in a gallery and then cross your fingers or whatever. Like, I don't know, that's the conception I think that we have at the start of like our professional lives. But there are as many different ways to make a living as an artist as there are like different people being artists. So rest assured that it's not like one size fits all, that, oh, if I don't fit the mold, of being an artist in this particular way or making a living this particular way, somehow, it's not going to work out for me or whatever. It's a lot of different ways. The thing is, and this is where most people, by the way, This is where most people fail, because this is the inconvenient truth about it, is you have to put effort into the professional side of things. That can mean anything from being professional in the way you produce works. All your canvases are nice, your canvases are well stretched, your frames work and fit and are made for the painting. You know, when you ship a painting, it's got a great box and it's taken care of and it's safe and it's clean and the varnishing is well done. You know, all the expenditures that you have to have just to have professional gear to like make the artwork, that's something you have to do. You know, there's a lot of work just to the things you can control, which, by the way, then leads to the things that you can't control. Like, you can't always control, you know, if people are going to connect with and or buy your artwork. If we could, I mean, just send me the link to that article and I'll thank you forever. But, you know, it's a matter of, like, I think doing well the things you can control, so the things that are out of your control become, hopefully, at least manageable. That's what I would say. But it's a ton of effort, ton of work. It takes a lot of focus. And by the way, that's just one side of it. You could even say, I said that it could be just about making the work, but as well, you want to think about, you can even sell your own work. Like, that's what I do. You know, I mean, most of the sales that I make are just me talking to a client and them saying, oh, I like this or I like that, and quoting them a price. And sometimes things work out, sometimes they don't. But, you know, I know from experience, you know, not every artist like wants to be in a position where they have to do that. Like, they'd rather just, I don't know, be painting and kind of hoping that things work out. But I know and I understand, like, for artists, if you're gonna make a living, really, you know, the business part of it, it takes effort. It takes focus. It takes your participation. It's not just gonna like happen on its own. Even if it's just, you know, the business part is just, oh, I just send it to a gallery. All the stuff you do before it goes to the gallery is still part of the job, and that takes a ton of effort as well. Anyway, off my soapbox. Done with that, but it's possible to do. I will say it's definitely possible, and there are a lot of things about it that are in your control. If you just put your effort in those places consistently over time, you can have results. It's not impossible. Let's see. Jim Sketch Testing says, are you mixing solely on the palette, or do you adjust the paint that's already on the canvas? It's a little bit of both. I mix up mostly what I want here, and then on the canvas, a lot of times I'll kind of shift it and adjust it, change it a little bit for like what I think it needs to be once I get it into that context. Yeah, it's all about how it kind of marries together, like on here. That's the kind of the truth of whether your mixtures and all that stuff kind of worked out the way it was supposed to, is whether or not when you get it on the canvas, whether all that stuff kind of makes sense. So yeah, like that means that sometimes when I get on the canvas, I realize, oh, it didn't make sense. I need to like change this or that about it. Happens all the time. All right, what's next? Right, Zabili Mi Zolwia says, what would you recommend for beginner at painting, oils or acrylics? I would say just get into oils. You're going to eventually, you know, no reason to forestall the inevitable, you know, get into oils. By the way, are you a young painter? Are you someone who like has a studio or a space that you can commit to painting? You know, these are also some questions you want to ask yourself about what materials eventually you use. Maybe, by the way, using oils is like highly impractical for you. At that point, maybe acrylic's an interesting option. I'm not saying it isn't, but I think if you're asking like, in the long run, you know, what would you have rather used? You know, just get used to oil paint, because that's going to be kind of your bread and butter. That's what you're going to be using the most of if you are eventually a professional. I mean, within what I do, you know, I mean, if you like representational painting and you like, you know, kind of the stuff that I do on my channel and stuff that I do on my Patreon, that's all going to be oil paint. And the kind of flexibility that oil paint has also is a kind of a part of the, I don't know how to say this, but like some of the things that you need to do, you need to have like paint as flexible as oil paint to do it. Your oil paint will kind of go everywhere with you. You know, you can get a lot done. Some nice fresh wet oil paint. It's the most generic advice ever. So I just got to get this little nose shape sorted. If I don't do it now, I don't know when I'm ever going to do it. Let's see. All right. Zaid Shah says, thoughts on Mark Carter and all the work he has on YouTube for free. I unfortunately don't know who Mark Carter is, which I hate to say. I'm sure he's out there making amazing stuff. I just don't know. Yeah, I don't know him. Let's see. Daniel Art Mogolon says, watching from Venezuela in South America. What's up, man? JD Anarchy says, do you know about any other sites to put up your work rather than Instagram, Facebook, and DeviantArt? Yeah. Well, I know that Adobe has one called Behance. That's they're really trying to populate at the moment. I was doing streams for them on their website. But eventually, like, I couldn't commit the time, I have my YouTube audience, and that's where I kind of want to be. So I decided eventually I couldn't split that time. But it's cool that you asked that, because also, for everybody, every different social platform has a slightly kind of different personality to it, I would say. And just like every person kind of does. But that also means that, not everybody's meant to be successful on the same kind of social media platform. Like, for instance, for me, Instagram was good because, frankly, because sometimes I'm kind of a scattered person. And so, like, always, like, making really long form, super planned out, super orchestrated, structured content was not going to be the thing that worked for me, at least early on. So in that sense, like, YouTube, wouldn't have worked as well for me early in my career, kind of making content. Later on, like now, actually, I think YouTube fits much better even what I do. So I'm actually, that's why I kind of do these streams, is that I think actually YouTube is a much more interesting place for kind of really long form content. Like, by the way, how long does it take to make a painting? A really long time. So that's why I'm kind of on this one. But yeah, so just a generic advice, if you're thinking about being on social media and having that be a part of your professional life, just consider, like, which one of the platforms kind of makes most sense for you. Because again, they're not all the same. And so the things that it takes to be successful on each one is also very different. Like, if you're someone who likes super structured stuff, I would actually say kind of Instagram might, it's just generic advice, so just take it for what it's worth, might not actually be the place for you, partly because, like, the one thing I've learned in collecting data, about my Instagram post is that, like, basically the answer is just keep it fresh. I can make one great piece of Instagram content, and it can be super successful that day when I post it. And you could take a similar, kind of content, made just as well, high quality, all this stuff, whatever, and the next day, and it doesn't read at all, it doesn't track at all, because I think, like, the attention span for Instagram is, like, pretty small. frankly. And so you need to like keep tickling people's whatever the center of their brain where they're adjusting to new things. That's kind of what Instagram's about. That's just in my experience, by the way. Whereas, like, again, maybe on YouTube, you could do, more planned out, structured content, and that like really fits for everybody. Like everybody's happy that's what you're doing. So it just kind of depends upon your personality and kind of where you can be. But in terms of like where you can kind of become successful, I mean, that platform does have to have a kind of a critical mass, doesn't it? Like you need a certain amount of people on the platform to form an audience. So yeah, no, I don't know if I know like any ones that you wouldn't be aware of. By the way, listen, folks, people, there's still people doing just fine on Facebook. Just FYI, I'm not one of them. But there's still people out there on Facebook living and loving life and talking about art and doing everything that they do on Facebook, Another thing you can think of, JD, actually, is like what, and this gets really businessy, but like what demographic, like what age group do you think the people are that will be like most interested in what you're doing? Because if it's, people between the ages of like 15 and 18 or whatever, or like, 15 and 19, like you better be on TikTok, like I'm on TikTok only because, it's just like you have to kind of have an account everywhere if you do what I do. So I just have an account. I don't really do much of anything with it, but I have it. So if one day I ever need to like be on TikTok for any reason, then I'm there. But yeah, like that's so thinking about that in a really practical way is a good kind of introduction to what you'll need in order to be kind of successful on that platform. It's like, again, what age group is kind of really into what you're doing. And that could also be just as simple as like, frankly, like what is your age? Like the stuff that you're into, likely people that are your age will have some kind of vibe about that. Like, is a 15-year-old really going to vibe with me, like the content that I make? Probably not. I don't think so. I mean, I don't know, but I don't think there's a lot of like 15-year-olds. By the way, if you're 15 and you're watching this, call me out on being wrong about this, but I think that the majority of people that watch what I make are probably at least between like 18 and 35. That would be my best guess. Watch the 15-year-olds come after me now in the comments. Let's see. Reese Osborne says, do you have a recommendation for an inexpensive easel? Ooh, H-frame. What's inexpensive? Reese, I got to tell you, I'm probably a bad one to ask about that just because I know that you're coming to this from the States. I'll say that when the pandemic hit and I moved out of my studio and I left the school and all that stuff, I got an easel. Frankly, I think I just got one on Amazon. I don't even remember the model. It was just like whatever. It's like American Easel Company or something like that. But it was totally serviceable. It was just fine. Did the job it was supposed to do. And I never had any complaint about it. So I would say like an H-frame is an H-frame, and you can probably get one for, let's say, in the neighborhood of $100, if not like a little bit less, frankly. By the way, portrait is coming. It's coming somewhere. I wouldn't say it's, full on yet, but it's a portrait. It's human. It's got 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. So that says something for it. So I was just making myself laugh. Anyway, Instagram ACC says, hi, I'm new here. When do you stream? Is there a schedule available so I can watch a replay? Totally. Every Wednesday, 4 p.m. Oslo time, I am live streaming I'm answering questions. I'm talking about my dog. I'm usually painting or drawing a portrait or something. But not limited to. I want to do some different. I want to kind of mix it up in these streams. I want to do some different stuff. So if you're thinking, wow, he always paints heads, other stuff's coming. Just because I kind of have some other things that I want to kind of get into, and I think this would be a cool place to do it. Right. Zabili Zolwia says, I constantly have recommendation from Facebook of pages that have over 500k likes. So you are right. People are doing it on Facebook, people. It's true. Gurpreet Singh says, I usually fail making the color I want. Please suggest some ways to make good skin tones that match the reference. I'll tell you what. Wait until January. The Flesh Tone Sphere that's coming out on Patreon and the Atelier tier will answer all of those questions. I promise. Mikhail says, how to get the most out of doing Sargent's charcoal portrait master copy? I would say do them as fast as he did them. Which is to say, don't try to like copy his handwriting. I think try to see the rapidness with which he drew them. Try to see the economy with which he drew them, and treat them as something where you're certainly making a study of something rather than making a copy of something. By that I mean, in the spirit that I'm certainly making the Sargent tutorial that I'm making, I know it's not going to be 100% Lady Agnew brushstroke for brushstroke. What it's going to be is me like kind of learning from the in a way like the combinations of color and value and design that he used, and picking up the pieces, so to speak, from kind of watching that portrait so intensely, so closely, and hopefully, by the way, we'll get to a place where there's a great resemblance as well. But it won't be brushstroke for brushstroke. So that's what I'd say about copying Sargent's, anything from Sargent, frankly. Because he's somebody who's so like, his brush has so much fluidity, unless it's literally like you kind of want to reproduce Sargent, I would say that it's more interesting to kind of take a walk in his shoes rather than to try to totally replicate him. Sorry, getting around this eye, there's a lot of little angles to make. And I would like to make them correctly. Hopefully. Ugh. Probably too soon to get into the, frankly, the details of the eye. But just for the benefit of the stream, I'm going to go ahead and get into some of them. Just because it's probably boring to just watch me paint the planes of the head. But the reality is, like, yeah, if I'm doing this non-streamed, there's a lot more planes of the head work to do before what I'm doing now becomes particularly relevant. But I'll save that for the Patreon tutorials. Here on YouTube, it's about having fun. Let's see. All right, we've got someone who's 17 watching. I knew it. Rumen Plamanov says, you got to tell what stuff is coming on the streams. It's not going to be like, it's not going to be like a Jackson Pollock adventure. It's just going to be like that I'll get into landscape painting or still life painting or, color studies or other kind of subjects that are not like just me painting like an Alla Prima head. Even though, like, by the way, I quite enjoy doing that. There will be a lot of that. It's just going to be mixed up with kind of other topics as well, just because I feel like it's a cool place for me to, get into other subject matter and like stuff that's just been on my mind and that I wanted to experiment with. Legit egg tempera painting is coming. I'll probably start it on a stream because why not? But I have another camera like that I'll have to shoot from above, so you can actually see the palette for that, because it's going to be like more runny than what like oil paint would be, for instance. Let's see. Yeah, Mikhail was saying different materials would be interesting. Egg tempera is on the way. Ruben Blanco asks, why do you usually paint younger models, or is it a matter of lacking your own reference material? All the reference material is my own reference material. So, which, by the way, a lot of it is also available on Patreon. So, for instance, if you're looking for this model reference, there's a link actually in the description of this video that will take you to a Patreon post where you can download this totally for free. It's my gift to the YouTube watchers of the world. If you want to work along with me, you're welcome to do it. And that's why I make those available to everybody, because I feel like it is kind of hard to get good reference, which again is why I do that on Patreon as well. I have a pretty deep reference library by this point, where there's all sorts of model images that you can that you can benefit from when you're working on the tutorials that I make. Let's say, oh, and why are they young? Why are they young? Why are most of the models young? I don't know. I mean, a lot of them were also students, like at the academy, and so I think the average student there is a little bit younger. Yeah, I guess it never occurred to me that I was painting younger people, so I don't really have a reason for that necessarily. But yeah, I guess most of them are pretty young. Also, by the way, you know, just so you know as well, if you are using these images, when I shoot with these models, I also get I also pay as well for the image rights, the reproduction rights, so that, like, basically, if you're a model and someone takes a picture of you, it doesn't mean that they have the right to use that in like a monetized way. Like, for instance, in my Patreon, there's a lot of model packs that like come with it. So that's like a part of a service that I'm benefiting from. So those model packs, I need to have like a model release for those. In some cases, by the way, it can take the form of an oral agreement if it's somebody that I know very well. But for professional models like the one that you're seeing here, there's a genuine, you know, signed image rights agreement that goes along with that. All right, let's see. MJ says, what are your thoughts on YouTube hiding the dislike count? I guess that's something that happened. I don't know anything about it. Ben Gurley says, making painting on canvas paper from Legion good enough to be sold, or are those only used for live stream? And if you sell them, would you mount them on a panel? They will, by the way, there is a studio sale coming up November 21st. It'll start out on Patreon. And all of my Alla Prima paintings will be in that as well. It's archival paper. It's made specifically for the purpose of oil painting and nothing else. And so it will last, as far as we know, about as long as any canvas that you're going to buy today will last to make an oil painting on top of. So they're archival. Yes, eventually they will be for sale also. Yeah. And no, actually, I won't be mounting them onto panels. However, eventually I'm going to have this paper, not this one specifically, but this kind of paper mounted onto panels as well, because I think it's just a nice thing for framing. Yeah. Gilgamesh says, hi Stephen, I want to know, do you use glazing on your portraits? If so, for what purpose? Hue correction, smoother transitions. Yeah, Gilgamesh is reminding me to remind people to like and subscribe if you're watching and, you know, it's of any merit to you whatsoever. Please just give the video a like, a thumbs up, and yeah, subscribe if you want to get notified when I'm doing live streams. And by the way, I also release other like pre-recorded content on YouTube as well. So if you want, like, always portions of my tutorials and things are always going up there as well. Yes, but the question was, yeah, do I glaze? Sure. I mean, everybody glazes a little bit, don't we? I would say that probably, you know, if you know, like, between glazing and scumbling, I would say that I tend to scumble more than I tend to glaze. But for, you know, whatever practical purposes, yeah, like, I also glaze. It's usually just to, yeah, like, augment a little bit the, you know, the temperature in an area, or transition, or you know, frankly, to kind of like almost repaint an area. There's nothing wrong with using a little bit of a glaze to do that as well. So yeah, I do plenty of glazes. Obviously not in Alla Prima work, but when I'm making kind of longer, more refined work, definitely glazes and scumbles are a part of that for sure. All right. Bunch of questions coming in. Backman Linda says, yay for the future tempera stream. I'm on board for that, even though you're up at 6:30 a.m. in Utah. Eddie Sedgwick says, you ever work with alkyd paints like Winsor & Newton's Griffin line? If so, what's your take on them? Haven't done it. I heard they're a little bit smelly, but I like the idea of paint that dries super rapidly. Emissary says, may I ask how many brushes you're using for this Alla Prima? I actually just have two. The two that I have in my hand are all I'm using. Sad Idiot, who watches a lot of my streams, I feel you got to change that screen name. Don't make your screen name Sad Idiot. What should be the ratio between drawing to study and drawing for fun? For some of the draws, 50 to 62 hours a week, excluding pomodoro. Pomodoro? Tomatoes? So the ratio, I mean, hopefully, in a way, you can enjoy also the drawings that you do for fun. I mean, that was always the thing for me, you know, just understanding myself, is that if I don't have some kind of fun doing something, I'm far less likely to continue doing it. So, I mean, it's why, like, you know, a lot of people probably fail in going to the gym often enough, so they don't find it fun. They don't find exercise enjoyable. Like, they kind of like what happens, the result of it, but they don't like doing it. So I would say, as much as possible, try to engage with whatever fun part there is to what you're doing, especially if you plan to kind of become a professional. I think the worst thing that you could do would be to engage in a career that is completely the alternative of something that you enjoy. I think that's tough to make that work. So hopefully the ratio is 100% drawings you enjoy or drawing for fun, I guess what you were saying. Maybe that's a little bit different. But hopefully you're able to have a kind of fun all of the time. And if you're not, I think it's, you know, you can think about changing the parameters of like how your practice is shaped. You know, like is it the subject matter that you find like is not as fun, or maybe you're just talking about like sketching versus, you know, proper, you know, long form drawing. I do believe a lot in the kind of fast and slow, but it probably depends week to week. You know, it's just about when you go into the studio, you got to feel a little bit jazzed up. You got to feel excited to be getting ready to work on what you're going to work on. If you don't feel that, you need to get into something where you are feeling that. So I would say, as soon as you start to feel like you're not focusing because it's not, you know, it's not what you want it to be, you got to change it. It's a lot of questions, but listen, people, it's about to be puppy time. Like, I'm about to get out of here and get over there and be with Iggy and Cornelia. So there's a lot of questions coming in. I'm not going to get to those, but thank you so much for watching this. If you like the channel, you like the content, like and subscribe, yada, yada, yada. If you really want to learn about how to do this stuff, there are links to my Patreon page in the description for this video. The Atelier tier is going bonkers in the next few months. We're getting into painting. There's going to be grisaille sphere and color mixing and all this stuff like coming up. It's a $10 subscription, so if you want to be there, be there. If you want to keep being here, 4 p.m. Oslo time every Wednesday, that's when I'm doing these streams. and wish me luck to try and finish this in the next evening